Don't smile, a woman's voice murmured, soft enough to sound like a prayer, sharp enough to cut glass. Not tonight. A beat. Then the church doors opened. Cold ocean wind slipped in first, carrying a thin mist that clung to silk and eyelashes. Heads turned like a single organism. Camera flashes stuttered from the side aisle. Somewhere, someone's laugh died halfway through, like a light bulb popping. 3 small boys stepped into the doorway. Not running, not fidgeting, not lost, just steady. Their fingers were threaded into the woman's hands, one on each side and one slightly behind, clutching the hem of her dress as if it was the only safe thing in the room. The bride at the altar froze with a smile still painted on. The groom's jaw tightened, the muscle in his cheek jumping once like an exposed nerve. The woman's heels clicked against the white aisle runner. A sound so small, yet in that silence, it sounded like a verdict. At the front row, an older woman in pearls lifted her chin, eyes narrowing. Her face didn't change, but the hand on her cane flexed as if she'd just felt a tremor through the floor. The groom leaned forward, lips barely moving. "What are you doing here, Claire?" Claire's gaze didn't leave him, not even when the guests began whispering her name like it was a scandal they'd waited years to taste. She tilted her head, almost gentle. "I'm here because you invited me," she said, "to celebrate your son." The groom's eyes flicked, involuntary, toward the side door where the birthday cake waited. 6 tiers of sugar and lies. Then Claire's voice dropped into something only he could hear. "And because I'm done letting you bury the truth." His nostrils flared. Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You can stop pretending," she whispered. "The infertile one was never me." A ripple went through the room, like the air itself had just been slapped. The groom stiffened, rage flashing hot and fast. And right then, the smallest boy, 5, maybe, looked up at Claire and asked, clear as a bell, "Mom, do we have to stay long?" The word mom landed like a gunshot. The bride's bouquet slipped, petals scattering across the altar steps. The groom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. And Claire, still holding 3 small hands, took one more step forward. She wasn't walking into a wedding. She was walking into a battlefield. But this story didn't begin here. To understand why his face went pale, why his mother stopped breathing, why his bride's smile finally cracked, we have to go back 5 years. To the moment a woman was blamed for a wound she didn't even have. On paper, Claire Monroe had the kind of marriage people envied, the kind the magazines wrote about in glossy spreads. Hartwell Air Mary's art curator, a love story in Manhattan, a rooftop reception, a string quartet, champagne poured like water, a groom who looked like he'd stepped out of an investment ad, clean suit, clean smile, clean future. Liam Hart. He wasn't just wealthy, he was inevitable. The kind of man who walked into a room and made other men unconsciously straighten their cuffs. The kind of man whose last name opened doors before he even touched the handle. Hartwell Group, real estate, private equity, hospitals, media. A family empire with roots deeper than most people's entire bloodlines. And Claire? Claire was the soft contrast to all that steel. She wasn't born into money. She didn't have the Hartwell polish in her veins. She had something else. Quiet intelligence, careful warmth, and the kind of calm that made Liam feel like he could finally take his armor off, at least in the beginning. Their first year was easy in a way that almost felt suspicious. They traveled. They hosted dinners where the food was more art than meal. Claire laughed more than she ever had because Liam could be charming when he chose to be. His attention, when it was hers, felt like sunlight. But then the questions started. Not from strangers, from family. From the people who acted like they were smiling for you while sharpening knives behind their teeth. It began at Eleanor Hart's townhouse on the Upper East Side. Dinner table, crystal. Silverware you could see your reflection in. Eleanor's pearls caught the light every time she moved her head, like a metronome keeping time for the room. She spoke as if the entire world existed to be organized by her. "So," Eleanor said one evening, stirring her tea as if this was casual. "Children." Claire's fork paused mid-air. Liam didn't look up. He kept cutting his steak, methodical. Eleanor's eyes stayed on Claire. "You're young," she said. "You're healthy. There's no reason to delay." Claire forced a smile. "We've talked about it. We're enjoying yourselves," Eleanor finished, the way a judge might finish a criminal's confession. "Yes, I remember when I was your age, I also had hobbies." "Hobbies?" Claire swallowed. Across the table, Liam's cousin smirked into his wine glass. Someone chuckled. Liam finally lifted his gaze, not at his mother, but at Claire, like silently instructing her to handle it. Claire squeezed her napkin under the table. "We want a family," she said evenly. "We're just waiting for the right time." Eleanor sipped her tea. "The right time," she repeated, tasting the words. "Darling, the right time for a Hartwell is before the world notices you're late." Claire felt the heat crawl up her neck. The rest of the dinner continued, but something had changed. A tiny crack. And cracks in the Hartwell world didn't stay tiny. They widened. They became questions, then expectations, then pressure that seeped into everything. Texts from Eleanor, comments from relatives, invitations to charity events where women with perfect smiles asked Claire when she was finally going to give Liam an heir. Even the staff noticed. Even the doorman's wife had opinions. And then, it wasn't just them. It was Liam. At first, he didn't pressure her. He comforted her. "It's fine," he'd say, kissing her forehead after another dinner where someone asked too loudly about babies. "Ignore them." But the longer time passed, the more he started watching her differently, like her body was a project he had invested in and wasn't getting returns from. The first time Claire noticed it was on a Sunday morning. They were still in bed. The city was quiet outside the glass windows. Liam's phone had buzzed. His mother, of course. He read the message, face tightening, then tossed the phone onto the nightstand. Claire reached for him. "What did she say?" Liam exhaled through his nose. "Just asking," he said. "Asking." Claire traced circles on his arm. "We're okay." He didn't answer. His silence was the first time she felt the distance that would one day become an ocean. Months later, they started trying. At first, it was private, hopeful, even playful. Claire tracked cycles, read articles, downloaded apps. Liam acted bored about it, but he participated. Then months turned into a year, and hope turned into something sharp. They went to a doctor. Claire went anyway. Liam came once, late, distracted, taking calls in the hallway like his life depended on the market more than his marriage. The doctor was kind, gentle. "Everything looks normal," she told Claire after the tests. "Your hormone levels are good. Your ovarian reserve is fine. There's no obvious issue." Claire blinked, stunned. "So, why?" The doctor's eyes flicked briefly toward Liam's empty chair. "Sometimes we need to test both partners," she said carefully. "Has your husband done a semen analysis?" Claire laughed, small and nervous. "No," she said. "He says it's unnecessary." The doctor didn't laugh back. "It's not unnecessary," she said. "It's half the equation." Claire went home that day feeling lighter, then heavier. Liam was in his office, glass-walled, skyline behind him like a throne. She sat across from his desk. "We should get you tested," she said gently. Liam didn't look up from his laptop. "I'm fine." Claire kept her voice calm. "It's routine." He clicked something hard on the keyboard. "I said I'm fine." Claire's stomach tightened. "Liam." His eyes snapped up. "Why are you pushing this?" "Because I'm the one being blamed," she wanted to say. Because your mother looks at me like I'm defective. Because every time we fail, I feel like I'm disappearing. But she didn't. She tried another angle. Just for peace of mind. Liam stared at her like she'd insulted him. You think I'm the problem. I didn't say that. You're implying it. Claire felt her throat tighten. I'm saying we should know. Liam's smile appeared, cold, thin. Claire, he said softly, dangerously. I run Hartwell Group. I negotiate billion-dollar deals. I don't have problems. It wasn't logic. It was ego. And ego, in that family, was sacred. Claire stood, feeling like she was the one who'd done something wrong. I'm not accusing you, she whispered. I'm asking you to stand with me. Liam leaned back in his chair. I am standing with you, he said. But I'm not humiliating myself in some clinic because you can't. He stopped, but the words hung there anyway. Because you can't. Claire's fingers went numb. Liam's eyes didn't soften. He turned back to his laptop, conversation over, and Claire realized something terrifying. He wasn't afraid of the truth. He was afraid of what the truth would do to his image. From that day on, the trying stopped being intimate. It became a schedule, a task, something Liam treated like a quarterly goal, and when it didn't happen, he didn't comfort her. He withdrew. He started staying late at work. He started traveling more, and when he was home, his hands were colder, his patience shorter. Then Vivian Cross appeared again. Vivian wasn't new. Claire had heard her name before. Whispers from society friends, old photos on the internet of Liam at galas with a tall brunette beside him. Vivian was the kind of woman who looked like she belonged on yachts. Elegant, bold, always laughing as if the room was her personal stage. She reappeared at a Hartwell charity event like she'd never left. She hugged Eleanor like they were family, and Eleanor smiled. A real smile. Claire watched it happen from across the ballroom, her stomach sinking. That night, Liam came home smelling like expensive whiskey. Claire pretended she didn't notice. She didn't want to become the suspicious wife. But suspicion isn't something you choose. It's something that grows when your reality starts shifting under your feet. Weeks later, Eleanor called Claire for lunch. Not an invitation, a summons. Eleanor's townhouse smelled like lilies and control. Claire sat across from her while Eleanor poured tea, unhurried. Eleanor didn't ask how Claire was. She didn't ask about the marriage. She went straight for the throat. My son needs an heir, Eleanor said. Not someday. Now. Claire set her cup down carefully. We're trying, she said. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. No, she said. You are trying. Liam is enduring. Claire's face went pale. Eleanor leaned forward slightly. Perhaps, she said softly, you should consider whether you are truly the right woman for him. Claire's chest tightened. Excuse me? Eleanor's smile was smooth. I'm saying, she continued, that sometimes love is not enough. Sometimes biology matters. Claire's hands shook. Eleanor reached out and patted her hand, like consoling a child. If you can't give him what he needs, Eleanor murmured, you should have the decency to step aside. Claire jerked her hand back as if burned. That day, she walked out of the townhouse into bright sunlight and felt like she was underwater. And she didn't know it yet, but the next months were not going to be about love. They were going to be about survival. The papers arrived on a Tuesday. Not at home. At the Hartwell Group headquarters, delivered by Liam's assistant with the same polite smile she used when handing people coffee. Claire sat in the lobby for 5 minutes, staring at the envelope like it might dissolve if she didn't open it. She felt eyes on her, employees passing, security guards pretending not to look. She finally went upstairs. Liam was in a meeting. He didn't come out. He sent her a text. Wait in my office. Claire waited in his glass office, staring at the skyline, heart pounding like she'd done something criminal. When Liam finally walked in, he looked calm. That was the worst part. He didn't look angry. He didn't look sad. He looked like a man signing off on an expense report. He tossed the envelope onto the desk. Sign. Claire's throat tightened. What is this? Liam loosened his tie. A divorce. The word hit her like a shove. Why? She whispered, even though she already knew. Liam's eyes were empty. Because we don't have time, he said. This family doesn't have time for waiting. Claire's voice trembled. You're leaving me because we haven't had a baby yet? Liam's jaw clenched. I'm leaving you, he said, because you can't give me what I need. There it was, the accusation, the sentence that would follow her like a shadow. Claire tried to breathe. We didn't finish testing. The doctor said... Liam cut her off. I'm not discussing this. Claire stepped closer, desperation rising. Liam, please. This is our marriage. Liam's eyes flickered. Annoyance, not grief. This is my life, he corrected, and I'm not going to waste it. Claire felt dizzy. She looked at the papers. NDA clauses. Settlement conditions. Requirements that she not speak about him. The marriage, the family. He wasn't divorcing her. He was deleting her. You're taking everything, Claire whispered. Liam shrugged slightly. You'll be fine, he said. I'm offering you enough. See? Enough. Like he was buying her silence. Claire's hands trembled as she flipped pages. You're not even fighting for me, she said, voice cracking. Liam's expression hardened. I fought, he said, for 5 years, for something you couldn't deliver. Claire's eyes stung. I loved you, she whispered. Liam didn't respond. Silence filled the room, thick and cruel. And then, like fate was determined to twist the knife deeper, the office door opened. Vivian Cross walked in. Not by accident, not awkwardly. Like she belonged. She wore a black dress, confident, lips red, hair perfect. She glanced at Claire and smiled. Not friendly, victorious. Oh, Vivian said lightly. Am I interrupting? Liam didn't look surprised. Claire's stomach dropped. Vivian stepped closer, her hand brushing Liam's arm like it was natural. Claire's voice came out thin. Is this... why? Liam didn't answer. He didn't have to. Vivian tilted her head, amused. Claire, right? I've heard so much. Claire stared at Liam. He avoided her eyes. Eleanor appeared in the doorway next, like she'd been waiting backstage for her cue. She looked at Claire with measured disdain. This is for the best, Eleanor said. Don't make it dramatic. Claire's breath hitched. I'm your daughter-in-law, Claire said, voice shaking. I'm family. Eleanor's expression didn't change. No, she said. You were a trial period. Claire felt something inside her tear. Liam finally spoke again, voice flat. Sign the papers, Claire. Claire stared at him. At the man she'd built a home around. At the man who now looked at her like a problem to be solved. Her hand moved on its own. She signed. Not because she agreed, but because she realized something worse than being divorced. In that room, she was already gone. She walked out carrying nothing but her purse. Her ring was still on her finger until she got into the elevator. Then she pulled it off, held it. And for a second, just a second, she wanted to throw it against the mirrored wall and watch it shatter. Instead, she slid it into her pocket and stared at her reflection. Her own eyes looked unfamiliar. Outside, it started raining. Not a storm, just that quiet, relentless New York drizzle that soaked through clothes slowly, like grief. Claire stepped onto the sidewalk, and she didn't know where to go. Because she'd built her entire life around a man who had just proven he could live without her like she'd never existed. That was the central wound. Not infertility, not betrayal, erasure. Being told you are not enough, and then watching the world nod along. Claire didn't collapse in public. She waited until she was alone. She found a small rental apartment on the west side, nothing like the penthouse she'd once lived in. The walls were thin. The elevator smelled like old paint. The window looked at a brick wall instead of the skyline. But it was hers. For the first time in years, the silence belonged to her. The first nights were the hardest. She'd wake up reaching for Liam out of habit, then remember. She'd stare at the ceiling, heart pounding, replaying the office scene like a movie she couldn't stop. Vivian's smile, Eleanor's cold voice, Liam's flat instruction, sign. Sometimes she'd open her phone and scroll through old photos, vacations, dinners, their wedding day. She'd stop herself before the tears came. She refused to become the broken ex-wife stereotype. Instead, she did the one thing she'd avoided for years. She went back to the clinic. Alone. No Hartwell name, no security, no pressure. Just Claire. The tests came back. Again. Normal. Healthy. Claire, the doctor said carefully, I need you to understand something. There's nothing here indicating you can't conceive. Claire stared, stunned, like she'd been waiting years for permission to breathe. So, it wasn't me, she whispered. The doctor hesitated, then nodded. It likely wasn't, she said, but we can't say more without... My husband, Claire finished bitterly. Ex-husband. The truth felt like heat under her skin. She walked out of the clinic with her hands shaking, not from fear, but from rage. For years, she had been blamed. For years, she had carried the shame. For years, she had been the defective one in the Hartwell narrative, and Liam had let it happen. Worse, he had used it. She thought about confronting him, calling him, throwing the results in his face. But then she pictured his expression. Controlled, dismissive, dangerous. He would twist it. He would accuse her of lying. He would bury her under lawyers. Claire realized something else, too. The truth wasn't enough. In Liam Hart's world, truth needed leverage, and Claire had none. So she did the only thing she could. She built a life that didn't require his approval. She went back to work. Not in a Hartwell-funded gallery, a smaller one, downtown, where she arranged exhibitions and talked to artists who didn't care about billionaires. She rebuilt herself quietly, one day at a time. And then, without warning, Ethan Cole walked into her world. He wasn't a suit. He wasn't a socialite. He didn't smell like whiskey and power. He smelled like rain and antiseptic, the faint trace of mint gum. Claire met him at a fundraiser for a children's hospital. She'd agreed to help curate a small art auction because she needed money and because she needed purpose. Ethan was there because he volunteered. He stood in the corner talking to a nurse about funding shortages like it was personal. Claire noticed him because he didn't perform. He didn't scan the room for status. He listened. Later, when Claire struggled with a heavy frame, he stepped in without asking. "Let me," he said. His voice was calm, steady. Claire blinked. "It's fine." He lifted the frame like it weighed nothing. "It's fine for you to accept help." Claire froze. No one in the Hartwell world said things like that. People there offered help with hooks attached. Ethan set the frame down and met her eyes. "You're not used to people being normal with you," he observed gently. Claire's throat tightened. "What makes you say that?" Ethan smiled slightly. "You flinched when I didn't ask your last name." Claire almost laughed. It came out like a broken sound. They talked after the event, then again a week later, then again. Ethan never pushed. He didn't try to save her. He treated her like she was capable of saving herself. Over months, Claire found herself breathing easier around him. He asked about her favorite books, not her ex-husband. He asked what she wanted, not what she owed. One night, sitting on her small couch with cheap takeout, Claire finally told him the truth. "I was married to someone powerful," she said quietly. Ethan didn't react the way people usually did. No widened eyes, no sudden interest. He just nodded. "And he left you," Ethan said, not asking, just understanding. Claire swallowed. "He said I couldn't give him children," she whispered. Ethan's eyes sharpened, not with judgment, with something like restrained anger. "Did you ever get tested?" he asked. Claire nodded. "Yes, twice. I'm fine." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And he refused," Ethan guessed. Claire stared at him, startled. "How did you—" Ethan exhaled slowly. "I work in reproductive medicine," he said. "I've seen this pattern too many times. Some men would rather destroy a woman than admit their own vulnerability." Claire's eyes stung. Ethan didn't pity her. He offered something better: validation. The months that followed were quiet in the best way. No society galas, no forced smiles, just Claire learning how to live without armor. And then it happened. A late period. A test she took alone in the bathroom, hands shaking, expecting nothing. 2 lines appeared. Claire stared at them like they were impossible. She sank to the floor, breathing hard. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She did both. When she told Ethan, she expected him to be surprised. He wasn't. He just held her face in his hands and said softly, "Good. Your body was never the problem." Claire's pregnancy was not a fairy tale. It was real: nausea, exhaustion, fear. But through it all, she carried something she'd never had before: a future that belonged to her. Then, when her first son was born, Mason, Claire held him and felt something uncoil inside her chest, like her heart had been locked for years and finally remembered how to open. A year later, Rowan. Then Jude. 3 boys in 5 years. Not because she planned it, because life, once it was free from Hartwell pressure, flowed back into her like water. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, Claire would think about Liam. She'd picture his cold eyes, his mother's pearls, Vivian's red lips. She'd feel anger rise, then fall away. She didn't want revenge. She wanted distance. And she almost got it. Until the invitation arrived. The envelope was thick, expensive, embossed with gold letters. Claire recognized the Hartwell crest before she even opened it. Her fingers went cold. Inside, an invitation. Aiden Hart's birthday celebration and the wedding of Liam Hart and Vivian Cross Hampton's estate. Claire read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. Ethan watched her from the kitchen, concern flickering in his eyes. "What is it?" he asked. Claire swallowed. "It's them." Ethan set his mug down carefully, like he didn't want to break anything else. Claire's hands trembled as she pulled out a second card, smaller. A personal note. Not from Liam. From Vivian. The handwriting was sharp, confident. "Claire, I thought it would be healing for you to see what a real family looks like. Come celebrate Aiden," Liam insists. "You'll be seated where you won't be a distraction. Vivian." Claire's stomach churned. Healing. Real family. Not a distraction. Every word was a blade, and Liam insisting. Claire could almost hear his voice. Calm, cruel. This wasn't an olive branch. This was a stage. He wanted her there. He wanted to humiliate her, to prove to the world that he'd won, that he had the heir, that she was the barren ex-wife who'd been replaced. Claire stared at the invitation until her vision blurred. Ethan's voice was quiet. "You don't have to go." Claire looked up, eyes burning. "I know," she whispered. Then she glanced toward the living room where three small boys were building something out of blocks, laughing. Mason, serious even at 7. Rowan, always watching. Jude, fearless and loud. Her sons, her proof. Not of revenge, of truth. Claire's jaw tightened. "But if I don't go," she said slowly, "he'll keep telling the story the way he wants." Ethan was silent. Claire inhaled, steadying herself. "I'm tired of being the villain in someone else's narrative." Ethan's gaze held hers. "Then we go on our terms," he said. Claire's breath hitched. "We?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Not to fight," he said. "To stand." Claire's throat tightened again, this time not from pain, from gratitude. That week, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in years, a familiar tension. But it wasn't fear. It was preparation. Like she was stepping into a room that once swallowed her, and deciding she would not be swallowed again. Meanwhile, in the Hartwell world, the celebration was being planned like an event meant to impress gods. The Hamptons estate was massive. White columns, manicured lawns, ocean view. The guest list was a mix of old money and new media. Reporters were invited by accident. Photographers were positioned for ambiance. Aiden's birthday cake was rumored to cost more than some people's houses. Liam wanted the world to see him as a father. Vivian wanted the world to see her as a bride. Eleanor wanted the world to see Hartwell bloodline secured. And Claire? Claire was supposed to be a footnote, a sad contrast, a warning. So when Claire RSVP'd yes, Vivian smiled. Liam didn't. He simply said, "Good." Because Liam believed in control. And he believed he'd already written the ending. Hampton's air was different from New York. Saltier, cleaner. Like the ocean tried to wash away sins that money refused to confess. Claire arrived in a black car that looked almost modest compared to the line of luxury vehicles outside the estate. Ethan sat beside her, calm. The boys were dressed neatly. Small suits, polished shoes. Mason's tie was slightly crooked. Claire fixed it with a gentle tug. Rowan stared out the window, quiet. Jude bounced his knee with contained excitement. "Is this a birthday?" Jude asked. Claire forced a smile. "Yes." "Do we get cake?" Jude asked. Ethan leaned forward, whispering, "If you behave like a gentleman." Jude puffed out his chest. "I am a gentleman." Claire's heart clenched, half amusement, half fear. Because she knew. The moment they stepped out of that car, everything would change. They entered the estate through the back entrance first. Staff, security, whispers. Claire felt eyes on her, immediately. A few people recognized her. They didn't greet her. They stared like she was a ghost that had shown up to haunt the living. Vivian's bridesmaids, women in pale dresses, turned their heads in unison, expressions sharpening. Vivian herself appeared near the staircase, wearing ivory, a practiced smile on her face. For a second, she looked satisfied. Then her gaze dropped. To the boys. And her smile faltered. Just for a fraction of a second. Enough for Claire to see it. Vivian stepped forward, voice sugary. "Claire, you came." Claire met her eyes. "You invited me." Vivian's gaze flicked to Ethan. "And you brought—" Ethan offered his hand politely. "Ethan Cole." Vivian barely touched his fingers like it might contaminate her. Then she looked back at the boys, forcing brightness. "Oh," she said, laughing lightly. "Are these nephews?" Claire's lips curved, calm. "These are my sons." The word hung there. Vivian blinked, her laugh dying. "My sons," Claire repeated, steady. Around them, conversation slowed. People leaned in, phones tilted subtly, ready to record. Vivian's voice tightened. "How nice." Claire didn't answer. She didn't need to, because the boys were already doing what children do best, existing honestly. Jude waved at a waiter. "Hi." Rowan stood closer to Claire, protective without knowing why. Mason's eyes scanned the room, serious. And then Liam Hart appeared. He came down the stairs like he owned gravity, suit tailored, hair perfect, expression controlled. His eyes landed on Claire, then slid to Ethan, then dropped to the boys. For one moment, the mask cracked. Not grief, not nostalgia, shock. The kind of shock a man feels when reality doesn't follow his script. Liam's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, voice low. "Claire," he said carefully. "What is this?" Claire smiled faintly. "A family." Liam's eyes narrowed. "Don't do this." Claire tilted her head. "Don't do what?" Liam's gaze flicked around the room. "Not here." Claire's voice remained calm. "You're the one who wanted here. You invited me to a stage." Liam's nostrils flared. "This is Aiden's birthday." Claire nodded once. "Exactly." Liam leaned closer, voice sharp. "Where did they come from?" Claire's smile didn't change. "From my body. The one you claimed was broken." Liam's face tightened. Vivian stepped in quickly, laughter forced. "Liam, darling, let's not—" Liam cut her off with a glance. Claire watched them both, feeling an old anger rise, and then settle into something colder. Control. She had learned from them, after all. The party moved forward. Music, drinks, laughter that sounded too loud. Aiden appeared soon after, 6 years old, dressed like a tiny prince. Vivian kissed his head for cameras. Liam posed with him, hand on his shoulder like an ownership claim. Claire watched from a distance. Aiden's eyes wandered. Curious. He noticed the 3 boys. He stared. Mason stared back, not hostile, just aware. Aiden took a step toward them, then Vivian's hand tightened on his shoulder. "Stay close," Vivian whispered harshly, smile still bright for cameras. Claire saw it. The control. The way Vivian used the child like a prop. Claire's stomach turned. Eleanor Hart arrived like a queen entering her own court. Pearls, cane, eyes sharp as glass. She looked at Claire as if seeing a stain she'd thought she cleaned years ago. Then her gaze dropped to the boys. Her eyes narrowed. Eleanor's voice was controlled. "Claire." Claire's throat tightened, but she held her chin high. "Mrs. Hart," she said politely. Eleanor's gaze returned to Claire's face. "You look... well." Claire smiled faintly. "I am? Eleanor's eyes flicked to Ethan. "And you are?" Ethan offered a calm nod. "Ethan Cole." Eleanor's lips tightened. "Of course." Then Eleanor looked at the boys again, something calculating behind her eyes. "Children," she said, voice smooth. "How lovely." Rowan clutched Claire's hand. Jude smiled brightly. "Hi." Mason said nothing, just watched. Eleanor's gaze lingered on Mason. Something about Mason's face made Eleanor's expression shift slightly. Not recognition. Suspicion. Then the wedding ceremony began. The guests moved toward the chapel on the estate grounds. Vivian, in her dress, glowed under the attention like she was feeding on it. Liam stood at the altar, composed, expression proud. Aiden sat in the front row, swinging his legs. The officiant began speaking. Words about love, commitment, family. Claire listened, almost numb, because each word felt like a performance, a lie dressed in lace. She hadn't planned to interrupt the ceremony, not for theatrics, but fate, cruel and poetic, gave her the opening anyway, because the officiant smiled and said, "And now, before we proceed, we welcome a special guest, Claire Monroe Hart, the groom's former wife." Whispers surged. Claire's stomach clenched. Liam's head snapped toward the officiant, anger flashing. Vivian's eyes widened. Eleanor's cane tapped once, hard. Claire understood instantly. Vivian had orchestrated it. A public humiliation. A spotlight turned on her like an interrogation lamp. The officiant continued, overly cheerful. Claire has graciously joined us to celebrate the union and the birthday of little Aiden. Laughter flickered. Polite. Cruel. Claire felt her cheeks burn. Then Vivian stood slightly, smiling too wide. "Claire," Vivian called, voice syrup. "Would you like to come forward? Say something? For Aiden?" The room held its breath. This was the moment Vivian wanted. The Barren ex-wife forced to smile at another woman's child. Claire stood slowly. Ethan's hand touched her wrist, steadying, not stopping. Claire took one breath, and then she stepped into the aisle. Not alone. "Mason," she murmured. Mason stood. Rowan stood. Jude stood. 3 little suits. 3 small hands reaching for hers. The guests made a sound. Confusion, disbelief, interest. Camera phones lifted. Claire started walking. Down the aisle. The same aisle she'd once walked with Liam. Only this time she wasn't walking toward him. She was walking through his world with proof in her hands. The sound of her heels clicking against the aisle runner echoed again. A drumbeat. A countdown. Vivian's smile froze. Liam's face went tight, eyes locked on the boys like they were weapons. Claire stopped near the front, not at the altar, but close enough that everyone could see her clearly. The officiant's smile faltered. "Claire?" Claire's voice was calm. "You invited me," she said, loud enough for the first rows. "So I came." She looked at Aiden. Aiden stared back, wide-eyed. Claire softened just a fraction. "This is your birthday," Claire said gently. "You didn't choose any of this." Vivian's expression tightened. Liam stepped forward, voice low, threatening. "Claire, stop." Claire turned her gaze to him. 5 years ago, this man had looked at her like she was defective. Now she looked at him like he was simply wrong. "You wanted the world to see a family," Claire said. "So let them." Vivian laughed sharply, trying to regain control. "This is absurd. Claire, congratulations on whatever this is. But this is not the time." Claire cut her off with a calm glance. "It's exactly the time," Claire said. Then she reached into her clutch. Not a weapon. Paper. A folder. Thin. Neat. Legal. The kind of thing that destroyed lives quietly. She held it up. 5 years ago, Claire said, voice steady, I was divorced because I couldn't have children." Murmurs. Liam's jaw clenched. Eleanor's eyes sharpened. Claire continued. "I spent years believing I was broken," she said, "because that's what you all told me." Vivian's smile twitched. Liam's voice was low. "Claire." Claire's gaze never left him. "But I wasn't," she said. She opened the folder, pulled out a medical report, held it up. 2 separate specialists confirmed it, Claire said. My reproductive health was normal. The room went silent. Some guests leaned in. Eleanor's grip tightened on her cane. Vivian's eyes flashed. Liam's face went pale in the slightest way, a crack in marble. Claire's voice dropped, colder. "You refused to be tested," she said, looking directly at Liam. "You refused for years." Liam's voice snapped. "That's none of their business." Claire nodded once. "It became their business when you made my body a public excuse." Vivian stepped forward, anger slipping through her polished tone. "This is a wedding," Vivian hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." Claire turned her head slowly. "I already lived through embarrassment," she said. "You're just finally meeting it." Then Claire looked at Liam again, and she said the sentence that turned the air to ice. "The infertile one," she said quietly, "was never me." A sharp intake of breath moved through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. Liam's eyes widened. "You," Claire didn't stop. "And as for the son you're so proud of," she said, voice steady, "the heir you're parading in front of cameras." Vivian's face went white. Liam's mouth opened. Claire looked at Aiden again, gently. "Aiden deserves truth," she said softly, "even if the adults around him don't." Then she lifted another document, a DNA report, stamped, verified, legal. Claire held it up. "Aiden Hart," she said, voice clear, "is not biologically Liam Hart's child." The room exploded in sound. Gasps, shouts, whispers turning into screams. Vivian stumbled back, clutching her bouquet. "No!" Vivian snapped, voice rising. "That's a lie!" Liam's face twisted. Rage, disbelief. "You're insane," he spat. Claire's expression stayed calm. "Am I?" she asked quietly. Eleanor stood abruptly, cane scraping. "Vivian," Eleanor said, voice deadly. "Explain." Vivian's mouth opened. No sound. Liam turned to Vivian, eyes wild. What is she talking about? Vivian's eyes darted. To Eleanor, to the crowd, to the cameras, to the side door where staff stood frozen. And then, like a drowning person grabbing at anything, Vivian pointed at Claire. "She's bitter," Vivian cried. "She's trying to ruin us because she..." Claire's voice cut through, calm as a blade. "Because I have 3 sons?" she asked. She looked down at the boys. Mason stared straight ahead, composed beyond his years. Rowan squeezed Claire's hand. Jude looked confused, brow furrowed. Claire inhaled. Then she delivered the final twist. Quiet, surgical. "The man who divorced me for not giving him children," Claire said, eyes locked on Liam, "was incapable of having them." Liam's face contorted. "That's impossible," he hissed. Claire's gaze didn't flinch. "You never got tested," she said softly. "Because you were afraid." Liam's fists clenched. Eleanor's breath came shallow. Vivian's eyes glistened with panic. Claire lifted the folder again. "And I did what you refused to do," she said. "I got the truth." She didn't need to read the report out loud. The stamp was enough. The crowd was already recording, already texting, already feeding the scandal to the world. Liam's empire, built on control, was slipping through his fingers in real time. Then Aiden's small voice rose, confused, fragile. "Dad?" Aiden asked, looking at Liam. The word hurt to hear, because Aiden meant it. Liam's face softened for one split second, then hardened again, as if softness was weakness. Vivian lunged forward, grabbing Aiden. "Come here," she hissed through clenched teeth, smile still twitching for cameras. Aiden started to cry, overwhelmed. Claire's stomach turned. She didn't want to hurt a child, but the truth didn't care what you wanted. It simply arrived, and now the Hartwell world was choking on it. The ceremony didn't continue. How could it? The officiant stood frozen, hands trembling. The guests surged like a wave, some toward the exits, some toward the drama, all toward their phones. Eleanor's voice sliced through the chaos. "Liam!" she snapped. "Private room, now!" Liam's face was thunder. He grabbed Claire's arm hard enough to bruise. "You did this on purpose," he hissed. Claire didn't pull away. She met his eyes with terrifying calm. "No," she said quietly. "You did this on purpose 5 years ago. I'm just refusing to be silent now." Liam's grip tightened. Ethan stepped in instantly, voice controlled. "Let go," Ethan said. Liam's eyes flicked to Ethan, contempt flashing. "And you are?" Liam sneered. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "The man who stood with her when you threw her away." Liam's lip curled. Congratulations. You married my leftovers. Claire's hand moved fast, not to slap, to pry Liam's fingers off her arm one by one. She leaned close, voice low. You think I'm leftovers, she whispered. That's why you'll never understand why you're losing. Liam's eyes flashed, violent rage. Eleanor's staff ushered them into a private lounge off the chapel. The air inside smelled like leather and money. Vivian stumbled in, face streaked with tears, clutching Aiden like a shield. Eleanor stood in the center like a judge about to pass sentence. Vivian, Eleanor said slowly, tell me the truth. Vivian shook her head wildly. It's a lie. She's lying. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Don't insult me. Vivian's breathing turned fast, panicked. Liam's voice was sharp. Vivian? Is he mine? Vivian's face crumpled. Aiden clung to her, crying. Vivian's voice broke. Liam, Eleanor stepped forward, cane tapping once. Answer, Eleanor commanded. Vivian's eyes squeezed shut, and then she whispered the truth, barely audible. No. Silence slammed into the room. Liam's face went blank, like his brain refused to process it. Eleanor's lips parted slightly, shock breaking through her control. Aiden sobbed louder. Vivian's shoulders shook. It was one time, Vivian cried. I was scared. You were gone. You were cold. You... Liam's voice rose like a whip. Who? Vivian flinched. Eleanor's eyes turned deadly. Vivian. Vivian swallowed, trembling. It was a doctor, Vivian whispered. Back then, the private clinic. When you... Eleanor's face tightened. Say his name, Liam snapped. Vivian's lips trembled. Dr. Marcus Hale, she whispered. The name landed heavy. Because Marcus Hale was not just a doctor, he was connected. He was a clinic director who worked closely with Hartwell's hospital network, a man with ties to the family. Eleanor's face went pale. Liam staggered back like he'd been punched. So my son, Liam whispered, voice hoarse, is someone else's. Vivian sobbed. I thought, at first, I didn't know. Then it was too late. Eleanor wanted an heir. Everyone wanted... Eleanor's voice was ice. Stop talking. Vivian shook. I was going to tell you. Liam's laugh was sharp, broken. When? After the wedding? After the cameras? After you locked yourself into my name? Vivian looked at him, desperation in her eyes. Liam, please. Liam's gaze turned to Claire, hatred and humiliation mixing like poison. You planned this, he accused, voice raw. Claire's voice was calm. I didn't make Vivian cheat, she said. I didn't make you refuse testing. I didn't make you blame me. Liam's chest heaved. Eleanor turned to Claire, voice low. Why now? Eleanor demanded. Why bring this here? Claire met Eleanor's gaze without flinching. Because you brought my humiliation into public, Claire said. You wanted the world to see me as defective. You don't get to ask for privacy now. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. You want money. Claire almost smiled. I already have everything I need, she said, glancing toward her sons outside the door. I want my name back. Eleanor's lips pressed tight. And you, Eleanor said, turning to Ethan. You're comfortable attaching yourself to this circus? Ethan's voice stayed calm. I'm comfortable standing beside truth, he said, even if it's messy. Liam's laugh turned bitter. Truth. Funny word. He stepped closer to Claire, voice dropping. Do you know what you've done? He hissed. Hartwell Group, my board, my investors. Claire's eyes were steady. You should have thought of that, she said, before you used my body as a scapegoat. Outside, the world was already changing. Phones buzzed, news alerts formed. By the time the first guests left the estate, headlines were being drafted. Hartwell heir's wedding erupts in paternity scandal. Ex-wife claims Liam Hart infertile DNA. Report leaks, child not biologically his. Liam's assistants scrambled. Lawyers were called. PR teams panicked, but you couldn't unring a bell. And in the Hartwell world, scandal wasn't just embarrassment. It was vulnerability. And vulnerability attracted predators. Within 48 hours, Hartwell Group stock wobbled. Within a week, investors demanded a statement. Within 2, the board requested an emergency meeting. Eleanor tried to control the narrative. She always did. She threatened lawsuits. She offered money. She tried to bury the DNA report under legal threats, but someone had already leaked it. And leaks, once they hit media, became floods. Liam's board meeting was held behind closed doors. Claire wasn't there. She didn't need to be. Because for the first time in his life, Liam Hart couldn't control the room with his name alone. The chairman, an older man with tired eyes, looked at Liam across the table and said, "We need stability." Liam's jaw clenched. "You have stability. You have me." The chairman's expression didn't change. "We have a scandal involving paternity fraud," he said. "We have accusations of medical misconduct connected to our hospital network. We have public outrage. We have investors calling for your resignation." Liam's face hardened. "This is a personal matter," he snapped. The chairman didn't blink. "Nothing is personal when you are the face of an empire," he said. "You made yourself a symbol. Now the symbol is bleeding." Liam's hands clenched into fists under the table. Eleanor sat beside him, posture perfect, eyes cold. "This is temporary," Eleanor said, voice smooth. "We will handle it." The chairman looked at her. "With respect, Eleanor," he said, "the public does not see temporary. They see rot." Silence. Then the chairman slid a document across the table. A leave of absence request. A polite way of saying, "Step down before we push you." Liam stared at it. He felt something he hadn't felt in years. Powerlessness. He signed. Not because he wanted to, because for once the room didn't belong to him. Meanwhile, Vivian faced her own collapse. Sponsors pulled out of her brand deals. Friends stopped answering texts. Her wedding dress sat in a closet like a ghost. She called Liam, crying, begging. He didn't answer. She called Eleanor. Eleanor answered once. "You embarrassed us," Eleanor said coldly. "You were never one of us." Vivian's sob turned into a sharp inhale. "But you wanted an heir," Vivian cried. "You pushed me, you—" Eleanor's voice cut like a knife. "Don't blame me for your weakness," she said. Click. Vivian stared at her phone, realizing she had built her entire life on a family that only valued her as long as she served them. Now she was a liability, and liabilities were discarded. Aiden was caught in the middle. And that was the part of the story that didn't feel satisfying, because children are always the collateral damage of adult ego. Aiden cried more. He asked questions. He started acting out. And one night, when Vivian screamed at him for spilling juice on her white sofa, Aiden shouted back, voice shaking, "You're not even happy I'm here!" Vivian froze, and for the first time she saw herself, not as a bride, not as a winner, as a woman who had used a child like a key to a locked door. She sank to the floor and cried, clutching her face. Aiden stood there, confused, still a child. And somewhere far away, Claire held her own sons, and promised herself they would not inherit that kind of emptiness. Weeks after the scandal, Claire received a message. Not from Vivian, not from Eleanor, from Liam. A single text. "I need to talk." Claire stared at it for a long time. Ethan watched her quietly. "Do you want to?" he asked. Claire inhaled. "Not for him," she said. "For me." They agreed to meet in New York. Not in a penthouse, not in a Hartwell building. in a quiet cafe near Central Park, neutral ground. Liam arrived alone, no security, no assistance. He looked different. Still expensive, still composed, but the arrogance had dimmed, like someone had turned down the volume. Claire noticed his hands first. They trembled slightly when he reached for his coffee. It would have surprised her 5 years ago. Now it just made sense. A man built on control would shake when control was gone. Claire sat across from him, posture calm. Liam stared at her like he didn't know what to do without the advantage. "You look happy," he said finally, voice hoarse. Claire didn't smile, but her eyes softened faintly. "I am," she said. Liam's jaw tightened. "With him?" Claire tilted her head. "With myself," she corrected. Liam's lips pressed together. He looked away, out the window, watching people walk like normal life still existed. Then he spoke, voice bitter. "You ruined me." Claire's gaze stayed steady. "No," she said quietly. "You ruined you. I just stopped covering for it." Liam's eyes flashed. "You didn't have to do it like that." Claire leaned forward slightly. "I didn't have to be silent like that either," she said. "But you demanded it." Liam swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. "I didn't know," he said, quieter. "About Vivian. About any of it." Claire's voice stayed calm. "You knew enough," she said. "You knew you refused testing. You knew you blamed me anyway." Liam flinched. Claire continued, voice gentle but firm. "You didn't want an heir," she said. "You wanted proof you were invincible." Liam stared at his coffee. For a moment he looked like a man instead of a headline. "I wanted a family," he whispered. Claire's expression softened, not with sympathy, but with clarity. "A family isn't a trophy," she said. "It's something you protect, even when it's inconvenient." Liam's eyes glistened slightly. He looked up. "Are those boys?" he started. Claire's gaze turned sharp. "They're mine," she said, voice clear. "They don't belong to you. They don't belong to your last name. They belong to the life I built when you destroyed mine." Liam's mouth tightened. Claire took a breath, the air tasting like release. "I didn't come into your wedding to take anything from you," she said softly. "I came to take something back." Liam's brows knit. "What?" Claire looked him straight in the eyes. "My name," she said. "My truth. My dignity." Silence settled between them. Outside, a child laughed near the park. It sounded like a different world. Liam's voice broke slightly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Claire stared at him. 5 years ago, she would have begged for those words. Now, they felt late. She nodded once. Not forgiveness, not cruelty. Acknowledgement. "I hope you figure out who you are," she said quietly, standing. "When you're not hiding behind an empire." Liam watched her rise, eyes tracking her like he didn't know how to let go. Claire picked up her coat. Then she paused, voice soft. "And Liam?" He looked up quickly. Claire's expression was calm. "Don't ever invite someone to a stage to humiliate them," she said. "If you're not ready for them to rewrite the story." She walked out. The air outside was cold. Claire inhaled, feeling it fill her lungs like a clean beginning. Ethan waited in the car. The boys were in the back seat, arguing about whether dinosaurs could swim. Claire slid in, and Jude immediately reached for her hand. "Mom," Jude said, "are we getting pizza?" Claire laughed. Real laughter, bright, unburdened. "Yes," she said. "We're getting pizza." Mason leaned forward slightly, serious. "Are we safe?" he asked quietly. Claire's heart clenched. She turned, cupped his cheek. "We are," she said, voice steady. "We're safe." Rowan watched her, eyes thoughtful. "Because we're together," Rowan whispered. Claire's throat tightened. "Because we're together," she repeated. Ethan glanced at her, warm. He didn't say "I told you so." He didn't say "I saved you." He simply drove, hands steady on the wheel, guiding them away from the city's sharp edges. As the car moved, the rain began again, soft, light, tapping the window like gentle fingers. Claire watched the water trail down the glass. For years, rain had meant heartbreak. Tonight, it meant something else. Cleansing. A reminder that even the most polished world couldn't keep truth from falling. And somewhere behind them, in a mansion by the ocean, the echoes of shattered champagne glasses and frozen smiles would fade. But Claire's life would not. Because the real revenge was never the scandal. It was the simple fact that she was no longer a woman begging to be chosen. She had chosen herself, and she had built a family out of that choice. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever been blamed for a wound you didn't cause, leave a comment. Not to prove anything, just to remind yourself, you're not alone.